It was not too long ago, on a Sunday morning, as John was headed out, that I came up to him and asked, "Would you be willing?" And his immediate answer was, "No." I knew, in having watched him go, not deeply and personally, but from a distance, I would say, going through what he did, that he had such an inspiring story. And he said, "But I'll think about it. I'll pray about it." And it wasn't too long after that he came back and he said, "I think I have something I can share." I've sat down with John. I've talked with John. He has a testimony of how he came to Christ, how he's given his life to Christ, and how that has carried him through not just this, but all of life. And I know that as you listen to him, you're going to hear not just his voice, but what God has spoken through him to you. I know I did, and I'm excited about what you're going to be able to enjoy tonight. John, come and just share with us some of your story.
Thought I might fall just getting up here. I don't speak in front of people too often, so I get a little nervous, but this is the first time I've done something this personal. So bear with me if I stumble a little bit, and my medication makes some words hard to remember, so this should be fun. But pray with me real quick. Lord, please be with me and guide me as I speak tonight. Allow me to say everything that I need to say and for everyone to hear what they need to hear. Help us to remember that while this is my story, it's part of your narrative and it's all about you. Amen. So I grew up in a Christian house and I accepted Christ at a young age, and so it wasn't through my accident that I accepted Christ, but as my pastor Richard Swartz said, he was talking about a different relationship, but he said, something like this either makes or breaks a relationship, and I kind of found that to be true about my relationship with Christ, that it helped me move forward and understand a lot of things better. So, as Brother Dave said at the beginning of the summer, he asked me if I'd speak to tell my story, and even after I said yes, I kept putting it off, because I wasn't sure what to say, and I was nervous about doing this. And so a couple weeks ago, I sat down with him and we set a date, and having a date firmly set and telling people it's going to be on this date kind of meant that I had to do it. So now I've been asked to speak at my church in Mississippi, so y'all are the guinea pigs, so any feedback would be appreciated. So my story, I was in a motorcycle accident last year, and that's it. Y'all have a nice night. The other day I met with my orthopedic surgeon, and I hadn't been back to see him since August, and so every time I go in, he says that he's amazed, not just that I survived the accident, but that I recovered as quickly and as well as I have. This time when I went and saw him, his words were that it's nothing short of miraculous. And so what happened was last November, it was the 30th, so 2 days after my birthday and 2 days after Thanksgiving, I went out for a ride on my motorcycle. And I had only been riding for a little over a month, but one of my favorite roads to drive is one that I take between Oxford and Hopkinsville anytime I come home or go back to school. And that's Bumpus Mills Road in Bumpus Mills, Tennessee, just north of Dover. And so that day, my trip down to and through Bumpus Mills Road was pretty uneventful, and I enjoyed it a lot. And so when I got to the end of Bumpus Mills Road, I decided to turn around and go back the other way, because it's a real curvy, hilly road, and it's fun to drive anything through there. About 2 miles into the return trip, I was coming around a corner, and there was a Chevy 1500 that was making a left-hand turn. They were in the oncoming lane, and their path took them directly into my left side. And so Tyler, the boy who was driving, he had just gotten his driver's license. He hadn't been driving for very long at all, and he was out with his little brother. Right behind them, there was a retired Army colonel, and he was riding with his 7th grade daughter. And so my memory of what happened after the accident's real fuzzy, and I just remember bits and pieces, but I met with him, and he told me about what happened, and I talked to other people about what happened, and all I remember is being on the ground on my back with kind of shadowy figures over me. The sun was going down, so I couldn't really see anything, and had the wind knocked out of me. Felt like I couldn't move. I had no idea what had happened. I vaguely thought I knew I had been on my motorcycle, so I thought I must have been in some kind of accident. I know I didn't do anything wrong, so there must have been other people involved with it. And so the daughter of the guy following them, she held my hand and kept me awake and called 911. And I just thought that was amazing. 7th grade, that she handled that as well as she did. And my dad actually delivered her, so it was just a funny coincidence there. But her father, he used Tyler's belt and put a tourniquet on my leg, and then he went to go find my leg, because my leg wasn't amputated in surgery or from complications later on. It actually came off in the accident. They call it a traumatic amputation. And so the police report ends with driver A's leg was found in a tree, which is about the most metal thing you can ever get in a police report around here. And they told me it took about 45 minutes to find my leg because no one expected it to go anywhere near as far as it did. The first EMT on the scene, I believe he was actually the mayor of Bumpus Mills. When he saw that my leg had come off in the accident, he immediately radioed for an air evac to Vanderbilt. And other than the brief memory of being on my back on the ground, I remember asking how the others were, just over and over, because I would ask and then I would pass out before they had a chance to answer me, or I would just forget that they had answered me, so I kept asking. And that kept going until I finally, was able to retain an answer. I had no idea how messed up I was, but I knew I could deal with my pain, but I wouldn't be able to take away somebody else's, and I was going to feel horrible if someone else got hurt in something I was involved in. Besides the amputation, my injuries were, I had a compound fracture of my left femur. I had around 5 breaks in my pelvis, including a complete break of the left femoral head, a compound fracture of my left radius and ulna, and a boxer's fracture of my left pinky. I didn't know that was called a boxer's fracture until I met with my orthopedic surgeon this week, so I needed to include that because I thought that sounded really neat. So the other injuries, the pickup truck and the bike were both totaled, so I fared better than them because they deemed me worth putting back together. So, I had a bunch of layers of clothing on, so I didn't have any road rash. I had a full face helmet on with a visor, and so I had no head injuries. We don't know where the face mask from the helmet went, but there's just a little scratch on it. Other than that, you can't tell that it went through anything. My dad told me that he saw me take off on the bike, and then a couple hours later he got a call from a state trooper, and they told him I'd been in an accident and that I'd been flown to Vanderbilt. And so my family got in the car and they rushed to get there as quick as they could. My grandparents, they'd been with us that week and had left that morning to go back home to southern Alabama. And so they turned around less than an hour away from home and drove all the way back to Nashville. And then family from Texas drove up to be with my family. And when my family got to Vanderbilt, they didn't know if I'd be alive or not. And to make it worse, when they asked for me, they were told there wasn't anybody in the hospital under my name. It turns out they had given me a John Doe name, which was Stat Mandrill. And so eventually they were able to find out where I was and get in to see me. And they said the only things I was saying amounted to, how are the others, which they had no idea what I was talking about because they didn't know anyone else had been involved. Where is Rachel? When's Rachel going to get here? And I need water. once I was in the hospital, I had to have quite a few surgeries. I don't remember the exact number of surgeries I had, but it amounted to about 30 hours of surgery in just a few short days. And the orthopedic surgeon wanted to take my knee, so I still have about 2 inches below my knee. And he wanted to take it because he didn't think it was salvageable. And because typically, if you don't have more than that, it's not worth keeping it because you won't be able to put a prosthetic on there. And it's only been recently that they've been able to do something with that. But when they asked my parents if that was okay, they said that they couldn't answer that, and he needed to talk to me. And that's one of the few things I remember is being asked, can we take your knee? And I told them that once there was no more hope to save it, they could take it, but until then I wanted them to keep trying. Another thing that they told my parents was that they had never done this much pelvic surgery on one person all at once. And my dad says that's because they don't operate on dead people, and they'd never seen somebody survive this. So from the surgeries, I now have numerous titanium implants. I have metal in my arm, in my left leg, and all through my pelvis. And anytime I go for an x-ray, I don't like to tell the x-ray techs what they're gonna find. And so they'll lay me down. They, clearly they can see something's wrong because I'm missing my leg, but they'll lay me down and go behind the partition and hit the button, and they'll be talking to me the whole time. Then they'll just get real quiet, and I'll see them poke their head around the corner, and they'll just real quiet. They'll say, "What happened to you?" It's not something they see every day. So before the accident, lifting weights and competing in strongman were some of the favorite things for me to do, if you didn't pick up on that from the picture. When I was in the hospital, one of the first times my surgeon came to see me, I asked him how long it would be until I could walk again. And really what I wanted to know was, when am I going to be lifting again? And he said I might need to prepare for a year of not walking. He said it might not be until November or December of this year before I started walking again. And when I asked about lifting, they didn't really want to answer that. They didn't know what to say because they hadn't seen somebody survive my injuries, and so it seemed kind of bleak. So on February 7th of this year, I stood up for the first time with a walker. So it had been 3 months since the accident, and they finally gave me the go-ahead to put weight on my right leg due to the pelvic injuries. And so 5 days after that, on February 12th, I took my first steps with a walker, and then on April 11th, I took my first steps with a prosthetic on, and I have a video of that. Oh, okay, I didn't have the prosthetic on. I lied. That was hard to do. I feel like that might be an understatement, but going from before the accident just being extremely fit and lifting ridiculous amounts of weight for me to this, it was just real hard. And so, but as soon as I got back on my feet, first thing I wanted to know from my doctor was, hey, I'm well ahead of schedule. When can I start lifting weights again? And so he gave me the go-ahead to start lifting weights with my upper body and to do some with my right leg, and then he let me do some with my prosthetic on, and we took it real slow. And so I started lifting, and all the breaks except for my femur had healed up at that point. And since I was starting to walk around, he said that would help with the healing. He said that he'd never seen somebody heal this fast from this many injuries, and that he had expected something to not heal, and that the x-rays were just amazing. And so 3 weeks ago, I had what I call my ampuversary. So it was a year since my accident. And to give you an idea of how far I've come since then, the week before my ampuversary, I have another video. I carried 85 pounds in each hand for 80 feet. give you some reference, that was 85 pounds per hand. Before my accident, I used to do that with about 250 per hand. So I'm getting there, but I also deadlifted 225 pounds that week, and I bench pressed 260 pounds. And so this coming April, it'll be a year and a week from the day of my first steps, and I'll be competing in the first annual North America's Strongest Disabled Man. And so it's just been real neat seeing how quickly I've been able to come back from something they didn't think I'd be able to come back from, and God's been there all through it. Without him, there's no way I could have done any of this. And I won't say that giving up wasn't ever an option. There was a time where I just really wanted to let go and not deal with any of it. And I thought about my family and my friends and how they'd feel if I did that. And I knew I needed to keep going. I thought about examples that we have in the Bible of people that just kept going, like Job, and no matter what was thrown at them, they kept the faith. And the way I see it, as long as I'm still here, God still has plans for me on earth. And while it would be easier for me to be in heaven, that's not his plan right now. As Paul wrote in Philippians 1, this is a section that has really spoken to me and meant a lot to me. He was talking about the thorn in his side and what he was going through. And he said, starting in verse 19, "Yes, and I will rejoice, for I know that through your prayers and the help of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, this will turn out for my deliverance, as it is my eager expectation and hope that I will not be at all ashamed, but that with full courage now as always, Christ will be honored in my body, whether by life or by death. For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. If I am to live in the flesh, that means fruitful labor for me. Yet which I shall choose I cannot tell. I am hard pressed between the two. My desire is to depart and be with Christ, for that is far better. But to remain in the flesh is more necessary on your account. Convinced of this, I know that I will remain and continue with you all for your progress and joy in the faith, so that in me you may have ample cause to glory in Christ Jesus because of my coming to you again." My accident and what I've been through has given me a better understanding of the physical struggles that others go through, and a much better understanding of people who have undergone and continue to live with great pain. My hope is that God can use me to further his kingdom, and that I can use my experience to glorify him. I might never know why this happened to me or what the plan was for this, but I can rest easy knowing that God had a reason, that this wasn't pointless, and it's all going to work out for his will in the end. We all have trials and struggles that we must go through, and they're unique and deeply personal to each of us. But at the same time, we can look to our brothers and sisters in Christ for support and wisdom to get us through whatever we're going through, knowing that they too are going through something. And I hope that something I've said today helps you in some way. So, that's it.